Janitorial Manager presents the Business of Cleaning podcast, the podcast that brings you the information you need to be successful in the cleaning industry. The Business of Cleaning podcast provides in-depth interviews with successful personalities from the commercial cleaning industry, as well as discussing the trending topics that matter to you and your organization. Welcome into the Business of Cleaning podcast, your number one source for information on the commercial cleaning industry. We release new episodes monthly, live from the Janitorial Manager studio located here in Toledo, Ohio. I'm Tim Clegg, the Marketing Communications Specialist here at AA Solutions and your host of the Business of Cleaning podcast. We want to welcome our guest here this month, Matt Stowe, Chief Operating Officer, and Greg Stowe, VP of Training and Compliance for Commercial Cleaning Franchisor, OctoClean. They're also the owners of OctoClean Media Training Platform for commercial cleaning business owners. Gentlemen, it's a pleasure to have you guys on this month's episode.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks, Tim. Appreciate it. Thanks for the invite.
Absolutely, guys. The first thing that I noticed in our discussion when we had our introduction call, looking at your guys' website, family. Family runs deep within OctoClean. Your mom and dad are still both involved with the company. What made the family get into cleaning? And I know you two specifically had a lot of early mornings and late nights helping run the family business when you guys were in middle school and high school.
Yeah, in hot summers. Well, yeah, so my parents are still, fortunately, we're able to provide, both mom and dad with the option to not work ever again. So their involvement in the business now is limited to typically a monthly, sometimes quarterly, depending on their schedule, maybe annual meetup. So that's a blessing. But yeah, family is very important to us, and we're really blessed to have what we call now our extended family of franchise owners and our team here at OctoClean in California, as well as our extended Arizona family. And so definitely like a family feel in the way we hire, the way we interview, the way that we work with folks. I mean, we hope. I have Moses here in the room with us. He's one of our family members. That they believe that. I know it can be cliche, but to us, we really think that, we want them to feel comfortable here. We want them to understand that, we work hard ourselves, and we want to be able to demonstrate that's what it takes to make it, to make it in life, not just in business.
And you guys have been here since the ground up, started 1989 originally as a window cleaning company, and then the door kind of opened by accident for commercial cleaning when someone asked your dad to clean their building.
Yeah. So it really, I always say it was not by accident, but by necessity.
I think they felt sorry for us because it was raining, and they knew that, we clean windows, and they're like, well, I'm about to see these, 5 people homeless. So like, hey, can you clean a building?
Yeah. Well, it's been, it was interesting growing up in a family where, our father was, a serial entrepreneur. I also call him a hustler. He would just find ways to, keep a roof over our head and food on the table. And this happened to be one of those instances where, we were cleaning windows for many years. There was a huge weather system that came through Southern California during, it was around 91, 92. El Nino. And that meant that it rained, constantly.
In a place that it never rains.
Yeah, right. And so it went from having hundreds of residential window customers to having very few that wanted to schedule any of their work. And it was a tough year and a half. Good friend of ours, as you mentioned, was a Mason, and he was also a church member. And when we were showing up for church, it's a community, so they knew that we were having difficulty and struggling. Both Greg and I were probably too young
to really realize
how bad it was, but it was rough. And they, I think, really as a way to show some community and outreach, asked my dad if we clean buildings. And of course, he's a hustler. So he's like, yeah, we clean buildings.
Not even took a breath. Didn't even think about it.
I don't think he thought about it, but no, it was, and then Greg and I and my mom ended up being the untrained janitors, to clean these facilities. And when I say untrained, it was pretty rough. We didn't know anything about cleaning. There was no access to YouTube or
Right.
internet. It was going to Barnes and Noble and Borders trying to find books on how to run a commercial cleaning company. The young people today don't understand how business was different in pre internet, YouTube, and AI and all the things that we have now. I mean, it was, I wouldn't have changed it, but it was different for sure.
So I got going to classes and things like that. Like, we got involved in, ISSA, and we got involved in, those organizations that would teach you how to properly do things. Which I still think is, a valuable thing for most people running a business, is actually get some classroom instruction. Even if you want to check out YouTube, you can only learn so much on YouTube.
And that's one of the topics we'll be diving into a little bit later on in our interview. Training. You guys specifically have mastered it, but just want to give a little bit of a teaser, a taste for that, Matt. There's a significant story that I'm interested for you to share with us regarding your first customer. For you personally, what about that experience has stuck with you since then?
Well, our first customer being the Masonic Temple. I think the biggest thing that we learned from that is, well, I think I already mentioned, we didn't know anything. We had to learn on the job. But as far as the sale of my first customer, I think maybe it's the better way to. I mean, as a young person, it was important to me that we learned how to sell, and nobody ever taught Greg or I how to do that. I mean, my dad came from the restaurant business. He had great customer service skills being in that background, and we saw that from early childhood, but nothing structured on how to go out and sell services door to door. So as a high schooler, my mom used to take us out to yard sales, and one of the things that I found was the art of selling by Zig Ziglar, a whole packet of cassette tapes.
There's like brown,
and a little brown case. And nowadays these young folks who may be listening to this are like, oh, cassette tapes are cool.
Right.
Well, they're cool until you burn them out. And that's what happened. I spent a lot of time listening to them everywhere I went. In the summer of my junior year in high school, I decided to go out and take a crack at going door to door. So did that. I was terrible at it. I thought it was like, hey, let's go out and see what we can do. And let's just say that the first person that said yes to me was a local karate dojo that is still in business.
Was that the first sale?
That's the first sale.
Was?
Yeah.
I thought it was the West Corp. Okay.
No, that was the first one. And the guy still
I hated that place.
I know, I did too. But I still see the guy. I've since then, both my kids have had karate there, and I've gone to back to do some karate as well. And he's told me now multiple times that he only said yes because he felt sorry for me. But honestly, that's all I needed.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all that I think anybody needs
is
that chance. And then I continued to suck at sales for a good couple years until.
Well, to his credit, I think you're still in high school.
Yeah, no,
exactly.
Yeah. I get it. And but these are things that, the only way to both of us, I think we could agree, the only way you really learn how to be great at something is to suck at it really bad first, and to be able to get through the constant rejection and mistakes and errors that are made along the way, whether it be a trade of selling or cleaning buildings or doing floors or doing broadcasting or doing podcasts or doing
everything,
whatever it is. I mean, it's the folks who are going to push through the garbage that you produce that are going to succeed. And there is no YouTube channel that's going to teach you how to do that. It really is just putting in the hard work, and that's what selling was to me, and that's what business has been for Greg and I. And we're doing that with different ventures now. It never stops.
The trials and tribulations reveal character in that time of struggle and trying to learn a new skill. Greg, you were in the service. Thank you for your
I was.
service from 1995 through 2002. How has your military experience and background helped you in business, and in what areas specifically?
I mean, with me, I do a lot of training, training creation, working with people, different people. I've been all over the world. I've been all over the United States, East Coast, West Coast. And really what it was for me is there's always a right way to do things, and the fundamentals for us are, people might, joke at it, but like cleaning toilets and things like that, there's fundamentals that wrap around how to clean. And then we work that into a system, and it's no different than when you're, going out to the field to, you know, do what you need to do out there. If you got a guy that's not in the right position, then probably someone's going to get shot up. So same situation with cleaning. I mean, everybody's got to know their job. Everybody's got to do it well. And then we have to create training that the average person can understand and be like, okay, that's how that works. Okay, now I can make money, because really that's the goal. Is there's a lot of people out there that are opening and closing janitorial companies like once a year. Oh, well, I can't make it. Or you know what, I'm going to get these counts and I'm going to subcontract them out, and then they die off in 2 years. Yeah. And we hear that a lot from people, but it's that the longevity for us. And I think that all starts with training. It's always something you can come back to, but like, I'll sit with a franchisee that maybe has failed, and we look at it and be like, well, you're not training your employees. Well, yeah, but Susie does a really good job. Well, what does she do? Well, I don't know. So it's always that is like, and I don't think there's any standardized training. We started in hospitals and things like that as well, where, in the military, there's a right way you do everything. Yeah. In hospitals, there's a right way you do everything. Right. And it doesn't really get thought about like that in the janitorial industry when you're cleaning someone's building. Yeah, doesn't. So that's really what really helped me. And like Matt said, it's failing and failing and failing at it. And then really realizing that, okay, this is the right way to go. You need to have training that's relevant, easy to access, yeah, and that can prove itself. Like if I follow this training method, I'm going to make money. Yep. Because really our product is a service. So,
and I think I never spent any time in the military, but I respect what they do. And I have a nephew who's just gotten through college as an officer in the Army, and Greg was in the Army and the Navy. My father-in-law was a Marine. I mean, so there's a lot of military folks around me. Greg would always joke that I would never make it in the military. I actually think I would have done pretty well, except
listening to people.
Except listening to
that would have been a problem.
That's an important part. Just a little bit.
Problematic. But what I love about it is the structure in which they created a lowest common denominator training and accountability, which is such a key to success in business, is that we have to train at a level where anyone can get it, and we have to hold them accountable to a standard and to a process that cannot be deviated from. And if you do, then there has to be, bring them back to the conversation. Right. This is how we do it. You went through boot camp twice.
Yeah.
How many of those folks showed up to boot camp ready to be a soldier?
Probably none of them.
Zero. So they had to train them to be that. So I think there's and
it's the same thing, because you have this inclination, like when Matt's bringing that boot camp thing, that I've watched TV, I know how it is, and how it is to be in the military, and then you get there and you're like, ooh. And the same thing is true with cleaning. Your mom told you how to clean. You know how to clean your room. So I'm dealing with the same type of people coming in thinking, I know how to clean.
How hard can it be?
I cleaned my whole life. And then it's like, well, that's cleaning, but this is cleaning to make money. This is a business. Yeah. Where do you need to be? Is it repeatable? Yeah.
Matt, you used a word too that I think resonates with everybody: accountability. It's something that everybody, I think, honestly, truly, when they're looking for a job, wants. They want to be rewarded for that quality of work, right? To holding and achieving standards and knowing that, hey, these guys have rules in place. I have expectations of me, and I'm able to carry that. And I think people take a sense of pride when there is that accountability that does go on and fall on everybody within an organization, no matter what industry it is.
Yeah. I think that the educational systems that we all are born and raised into, it is to teach kids how to color within the lines, right? How to show up to class, be on time, do your homework, all of those things. And they do it, I think, in large part because they're prepping everybody to work on an assembly line. I mean, that's been proven over time. We know that. But
Right.
it's also to instill, systems, and those folks are happy with those habits. And I think that's the problem with this industry that we've seen over the years, is that there is no structure and there is no management doesn't, and owners of small companies and commercial cleaning do not see the value in creating structure for their
Yeah,
employees.
small and large companies.
So
Not,
it is.
especially when it goes around who's doing what on the ground.
Right.
You know, who's that? Um,
Well, and I look at it, and I think I mentioned this when, we had a conversation before, is that I think a lot of business owners and managers are, the captain of their speedboats, right? And they're hoping like hell that their employees are going to hold on when they turn really fast,
Right.
but a lot of them are just going to fly off and go to the next place because they don't like to be uncomfortable. What we have to be able to do is be the captain of a cruise ship where everyone's comfortable, everyone knows their job, they're going to move forward. That boat moves just as fast.
Yes, it does.
And when it steers, you barely feel it. And there's amenities and there's comfortable places for people to be, and they know how they can move their way up. Like that's what our job as business owners is to create an environment where people feel comfortable in where they are and where they can go. And that, I think that's what a lot of people in our industry in particular suck at. I mean, they're just not good at it.
Protecting your business with policies, regulations to help ensure that your business is around and is protected is something that you guys have run a great YouTube page, have your own podcast, and has been a big success. That's been one of the videos that took off. The good old-fashioned days of a handshake. Hey, Matt, this is my word. You got to trust me here, are long gone. What are the essential elements that every contract should include to protect both the cleaning business and the client as well?
Well, I'll start with the scope, and then yes, I mean, Greg and I could go on. Like you said, we have a podcast about this, but I think one of the big mistakes that most people make is that they write a scope of work and then they never revisit it. Or they don't communicate clearly with the customer what is included in it and what is not included in it. So if a customer accepts us as a cleaning contractor, it's important that I wouldn't say go line by line, but we make sure that they understand it. And then if there are things that fall outside of it or are specific enough that they need to be documented, what we do is we carve that information out and we make that a separate line item or addendum on the agreement so that there is no mystification.
Yeah, usually that's scheduled. We'll schedule that.
And that's only more important. I mean, that's significantly more important as you scale, because it's easy when it's a mom and pop, right? But as you start moving from sales department to operations, from operations, to a training, conversation with a franchisee, there is no room for just follow the service schedule. It really needs to be clear, specific, and outlined. And I would say that the biggest issue that we see in our industry is that people don't know their scope of work. When I mean franchisees, employees,
everything,
supervisors, managers. And so they end up doing a lot of work for free because the client will call and say, hey, can you do the dishes? Can you do this? Can you do that? And they're like, no problem. And as soon as that customer sees that you're willing to give them something for free, they're going to keep asking for free stuff. And you've created that habit. You've created the problem. So I would say that for sure on scope of work and being clear on what's included and not included. And then we get into the agreement. The agreements are, they have to be easy to read, easy to understand, and let's not try to pull a fast one on a client.
Yeah, an easy way to get in, easy way to get out.
Yeah, because we see this a lot, and I know that there's some legal reasons that certain franchisors do it the way they do it, where they create 2-week cure periods, and and then they have to,
then that 2 weeks starts over again.
Yeah, show reasonable period, reasonable cause for termination. They can never get out. Make your contracts 30-day notice, 12-month pricing guarantees, or 3 to 5 year, terms with cost of living increases, with the option to be able to get out of that if cost of living goes over a certain dollar amount, because we've learned that over the last 5 years. Inflation has gone up by 20%. We've had to have conversations with long-term clients that their contracts were locked in at 3 to 5% increases, and that just doesn't work. So we've learned that how you write contracts, how you write scope of work, you really have to labor over that, and it's going to cost you a lot less money to hire an attorney to look over your agreements and make sure that they make sense and they protect you, they protect the people that are working for you and your client, than it would be to get a client that's going to ask for free stuff because the scope of work is maybe too general. So, spend the money on the attorneys and really labor over what your contracts say, and make them fair for both sides. That's what I would say.
I'm always very interested, and it just kind of sometimes blows my mind how in conversation, there's some people that don't have an established employee company handbook. How can a well-drafted employee company handbook or set of policies help avoid common legal and operational pitfalls in a commercial cleaning operation?
Well, I mean, like you said, the pitfalls is the big thing. But the other also thing that we deal with on our side is, if you don't have an employee handbook and you have new employees come in, they automatically think you're not a very good company. So that impacts the type of employee you can actually draw and keep. Because they're like, well, what do I do about uniform? There's so many questions that you're having to answer on the fly, or worse yet, you're having an ops manager out there like, hey, I think that you're cool with those shorts on. I think you can wear flip-flops to work. That's fine. You want to, have nose earrings and all this other stuff. That's fine. So it does give that standard. And then again, I mean, you're talking about, attorneys and people suing, you're talking about harassment, all that kind of stuff that you have to have, that I think there's a genre of people that think of janitorial, they don't have that. They're not professional. They're like, hey, the guy that comes and mows your grass, I just mow my grass. It's cool. Like back in the day when Matt and I mowed grass, we didn't have an employee manual, that's for sure.
Right.
But, it's changing, it's transforming the look of the industry and saying, hey, Mr. Business Owner, we do it just like you do it. We have an employee manual. There's certain things they can get away with. There's certain things they have that roadmap. And that's really the benefit. Like the military, they teach you everything, what you can and can't do.
And I think I want to be sensitive to another element of this, which is that most people who start janitorial companies are former tradespeople of the industry, right? So they've cleaned for another building, another company for many, many years. And somebody has said, hey, do you clean buildings? And they're like, yes. And so they just start, basically, they start a trunk of your car business. And they don't know the things, right? Like I warn people a lot. I'm like, look, the trade, but business is not the trade. And, business is all of the other things that you don't even know about. And so many people I see, it's not that they don't want an employee manual. They don't know how to get it.
They don't even know it exists.
They don't know what the laws are of the state. And in some cases, what we've learned, because we're a franchisor, talking to franchisees that are new coming in, they're treating their employees the way they were treated, which in a lot of cases is poor. Right? They're not giving them structure. They're not giving them anything. And so what we do is we make sure that every franchisee has systems in place, so that it already has a template with a wizard on how to build their employee manuals. And we do that before they even start hiring people. So they know all of it, and they have HRS systems, and they have everything they need, so they can, have everything buttoned up and everything's legal. And what we see most of the time is that they don't know how. It's not that they don't want to, they just don't know how.
You mentioned checking in, getting, an attorney to look over everything, but how important can regular check-ins also be in finding accountant help, different taxes, financial planning, and the long-term business stability as well?
Look, this goes back into the things you don't know that you don't know. One of the most dangerous things that a business owner could ever have is success. Because what you end up with is a bunch of money that you don't know what to do with. and you've never experienced it, right? It's the 10% less and 10% more of what you're used to making is the dangerous place. Once you can find a way to get through those uncomfortable times, and that's finding people, finding a good CPA, a good tax attorney who's going to be able to help you to understand, and a financial planner to help you understand how you're going to utilize the extra money that you've never had before. And that's not going out and buying a new Cybertruck or, finding some way to waste the money in Vegas or whatever it is. It's finding a way to reinvest in your company in such a way that you're not having to pay a bunch of money in taxes, and you can reinvest, you can do the right things, and you can build a legacy for your family, and for your business, hopefully a generational one. You need to have somebody you can count on to check in on your numbers on a quarterly basis, and tell you, in good faith, this is how you need to spend your money the rest of the year so that you're not having to pay a bunch of money in taxes. Lesson learned. We've been there.
And, I had a guest earlier this year, and when he was first getting started, he originally had owed $670,000. They brought it down to around 100, and finally then the successes started to come after that and was able to pay it off in a year. But those hard lessons, with the resources now and people like yourselves discussing these, having these continual conversations and channels, people like you guys are trying to help everybody else avoid having to go through the same disappointment, same mistake.
Yeah.
Well, and I want to be, again, sensitive to people's fears and upbringing, right? Because money is rude to talk about. And because money is rude to talk about, it was never talked about at the kitchen table. And so most people don't understand how to deal with money. And so they end up in a situation, well, now I have to go talk to a financial planner and a tax attorney and a CPA, and I'm embarrassed because I don't know anything about this. Guess what? Get over yourself.
Right.
Because if you don't do it, you still have, the train is still on the tracks. Okay. It's still coming. You just
Uncle
have to,
Sam's got to get his cut.
And they don't stop.
And look, all they are is they're bill collectors with guns. Okay. So please get some help.
Just a couple more follow-ups here. How often should a cleaning business reassess its budget and financial projections to stay competitive within their current market?
I'd say at least quarterly. I mean, we meet up,
quarterly.
we meet up with leadership team every quarter. I mean, well, a lot more than that, but specifically to go over projections, and review expenses and things that we don't know. And it hasn't been more important than the last few years.
Yeah.
I mean, the last 4 years with inflation being what it is, I think we'll look back at it as the most unusual and challenging time in our business, even though it's not a recession, even though it's not, 2007, 8, 9, et cetera. It's just one of those most surreal economic times for businesses. So I would say quarterly is best.
We've heard stories about companies waiting on a payment from their customers. How can businesses maintain that steady cash flow when dealing with late payments from clients?
You want to jump in on this? Because we have some strategies that we put in place.
I think Matt's first thing is, don't spend every cent you have. If you're a, company and you're privately held and it's your money, be aware of that. Luckily, we don't have a whole lot of that here. So Matt can probably talk to you about things you can put in place as far as accounting and, how you're writing your contracts, when you're sending your bills out. So, and a lot of it has to do with the communication with your customer. We have, you just wait till it's late. Sometimes it's like, oh yeah, I forgot Susie's on vacation.
Well, and let's unwind this for a minute, because not getting paid, again, we go back to the point where you're good at the job, but you suck at the business.
Yep.
Right. And so how many folks who are listening to this right now could honestly say that they they invoice their clients every single month on the 1st? Because if you move from the 1st to the 5th, that's 4 days. And now that AR, at your customer is pulling it in, and that may be a week later before they input it, because it's missed the day.
Right.
And
the
so,
checks and everything or finances are handled.
Right. So you've got to be disciplined to get out your invoices at the same time each and every month. And then from there, I would say we have certain protocols here where that on the 5th of the following month, if we haven't received payment, we start collection. And we'll call and like, hey, do you have everything you need? Do you need us to send you an email with the invoices again? And then when we get close to the 10th of the month, we send them a 10-day notice to cure. And so that would be as a simple email, still in the spirit of professionalism, but hey, we're in the business to operate. In order to do so, we need to have, money to be able to pay payroll, et cetera. If within 10 days we haven't received payment, we're going to have to stop service until we receive it. Because the most powerful thing that any vendor has is the day-to-day cleaning. And so if you want them to pay, you're going to likely have to stop cleaning the building.
And we've had to do that a few times.
And this goes back to giving away things for free. I mean, how many janitorial companies and owners are going to give away things for free because they're afraid that they're not going to be able to retain the client unless they give them things for free. And so this is the difference between living in abundance versus not living in abundance, is that if you're not selling constantly, you're not bringing in new business, it's replacing bad business. If you're not bringing in new employees that are replacing bad employees, if you're not putting in have the habits of doing those types of things, you're going to end up making bad decisions because you don't have the money, and et cetera, or you have bad employees, et cetera.
How conscious too do you have to be in knowing when the influxes in cash could flow and change during the season? So for instance, you guys are from Riverside, California. You don't get snow necessarily as much as we do in Toledo, Ohio, right? So how important is that for people to, okay, well, we're about to transition from summer to fall, and winter's quickly behind it?
Yeah, I mean,
And that's a great question. I mean, how does that really affect us? I guess.
And we're like, we can do year-round golf here. You guys can't.
No, we can't.
We can
try.
We can
try. You can try, but
don't bring a white ball.
It's interesting because we're in conversations with a person, up in Arkansas, and that was one of the first questions that I asked him was, what happens when it gets cold? Roads close, ice over. Like, what does business look like? Because we don't know. In our world, I would say that it has more to do with like just seasonal, changes, right? So like people, October, November, December tend to go into, holiday hibernation. And so decisions don't get made as readily
sales decisions
during that time. So our summers, on the other hand, are very, very busy. And so we bank that seasonal money that's coming in, and use, unlike a lot of folks, October, November, December for us is planning and pushing, right? So we go in and we plan what we can and we push on prospecting. So in January through April, everyone else who hibernated is already 4 months behind.
Yeah.
So we're killing it in January through, June. And then June through September are really busy times for us. And then we go back into hibernation, right? We don't, but they do.
Yeah.
So I think it's important that you do keep your money. And I also would mention that SBA has a lot of great programs for small businesses that, I'd recommend that any of your listeners look into that. There's some hoops you need to jump through. But they're
not difficult. You can have someone guide you there, through that process.
They're not, but you do need to be you need to be ready. You don't want to throw a bunch of money at a company that is not already structured, developed, has processes and procedures, has an employee handbook, et cetera, just as an example.
We're talking with Matt Stowe, Chief Operating Officer, and Greg Stowe, VP of Training and Compliance for OctoClean Services, located in Riverside, California. Training is essential for success for employee and business. Matt and Greg, along with your parents, you guys developed a system from Team System, team cleaning process, and modified it to your needs. We hear way too many horror stories from people over and over again in the industry, not training and throwing them to the wolves day one just because we're short-staffed. We need people to get to work immediately. Have you guys revisited or edited this process through the course of the years?
Well, I would say absolutely yes. I mean, what we learned really, really early on, working with Matt and I, is that you have a sales rep that's selling a scope of work and an employee that doesn't understand the scope of work, even if you handed it to them. So we had to develop a method of, first of all, you have to get in and out in a certain amount because I'm getting budgets, right? So I'll get a budget, like it takes, we've got, 8 man hours to clean this building or whatever it is. And then you also have to say it can't be dirty. So you have to have checks and balances. You got to have accountability. And that's where, well, they called it team cleaning, which Matt and I were doing that way before anyone called it team cleaning. We got a list of like 12 to 15 accounts every day, and they were different. And saying, hey, be back before 8 hours. See you later, guys. So we had to really learn, like, okay, I've got 3 guys. You got to do this. I got to do this. And you have to do this. And we just have to get it done. But that method and that process, while the fundamentals are the same from back in the day, we have changed the tactics of training, made it easier for people to consume. As technology changes, having a video on your phone now where you can just scan the QR code, it's much easier than having to be like, okay, let me stop and train you again. And then not only will people do training, it's also how we do like that foundational training again. Like, oh, you missed a trash can or you did this, you're having some problems. Instead of bringing someone in and, hey, stop missing the trash cans, whatever it is, we actually figure out where we went wrong in our system.
Yeah.
Because if you're missing something, ultimately it's my responsibility that you missed a trash can or you're don't know how to clean the bathroom. Let's start over again and let's look again.
When we have I mean, I'm looking at the saying right now in our training room. It's trademarked, so no one can take it. Expect to train, inspect what you expect, right? And that it's just constant, right? Constant. And so we lead with training. And I'll also say, to Greg's point, most buildings, right? 85% of the buildings that we, of a building that we clean are pretty systematic. Same thing, throughout. But there is no building that is 100% the same as the next one, as the next one, as the next one. So the modifications to our system really needs to be the care of developing a training program that it can be, consumed by the masses, but with the ability to communicate the nuances of a new building to the people who are on site. And I think when you create a culture of training, create a culture of accountability within your organization, the employees follow suit. But when you create a culture of, oh, you've cleaned buildings for the last 25 years, okay, great, go out and clean this building, then it's all based on people's interpretation of what cleaning is based on their years of experience. And that's the problem that most cleaning companies have, is that they're just creating this constant, like, I'm hiring people with experience, and it's really just a bunch of people who have their own little cleaning companies within yours. And so the training does need to be standardized. The training does have to be looked at and revisited, and we're going through it right now, like, with OctoClean Media, and noticing, recognizing how important it is for the community of cleaners in the country, because we get reached out to regularly now. Can you help us with this? Can you help us with that? We're like, how do we create training programs that they can consume, that they can replicate with their employees? So we're relearning stuff that 3 or 4 years ago we just developed, and we're like, oh, we could do this better.
Yeah.
So absolutely.
I mean, it's never done. Put it that way.
Right. Continuation, process, growing. And in our initial call, I thought it was interesting. You had mentioned initially offering too much training and losing money. How can cleaning businesses strike that balance in effective training and maintaining profitability without offering too much initial training and losing some money right away?
Well, I think that goes into like how we hire, right? We hire people that are going to do a specific role within a crew. And so if they're going to be a closer, what we call a closer, doing vacuuming and floors and so on, why would I train them to be a starter and a sanitor? Like, why would I train them to do utility work? I need them to know their trade really, really, really well, their role on the crew. As they build themselves from one role to the next, they are starting to increase their scale of pay, and their, and whatever their responsibilities are and supervision
And your confidence in them.
Exactly.
Really.
So it's train them what they need to know, keep it germane and relevant to what their job is. And then as they become more interested and show the characteristics of a great employee, then invest more into them. Don't just give them a bunch of stuff and then they bail on you in an hour, 2
Yeah,
hours.
that's really how the
Right.
system's designed. Yeah.
Saw a study recently done by Seismic on training, from training in general, just not commercial cleaning. I thought it was pretty darn fascinating what it revealed. It revealed that 80% of the respondents during that responded with that more training would improve job satisfaction, and 50% of employees consider leaving a company due to lack of training.
Yeah.
And then the final stat is 11% of organizations that continue to invest in employees, continue to invest in training, reported an 11% greater profitability year over year. I thought
Yeah.
that last part was just
I definitely see it.
exponentially.
We
No,
see that in our other businesses where we do floor care and things like that, where, I'll hire somebody from in a different state that run one of our floor care divisions over there, and they'll call you up, be like, I want to use this and this and this on carpet. No, you don't.
No.
Well, I think it would work really well. I was like, no, there's a method, there's a process, and there's a right way to do it. And then we just get into the training conversation. As Matt always tells me, like, anytime we pick on a new line of business, I'm like, I got to know everything about it because I've got to train it.
Yeah.
So a lot of times I'll be out there and he'll give me a hard time. Like, what are you doing on a scissor lift?
Yeah.
Cleaning solar panels. Like, well, I got to learn how to do it.
Yeah.
And there is a right method of doing things. And, it's not just that type of training. It's, HR training, it's accounting, it's everything, sales. Everybody's the same way. They want to live someplace where they feel like they're growing, whether it's, moving up the ladder or whether or not they're learning something every single day. And that's kind of how I've always been. And I know Matt's kind of the same way with that. So
I think that, when you look at everything, that you start breaking down what business is, and you're looking at accounting, how, it's bean counting, all right? You're going one thing after the other, everything has to line up, everything has to balance out. There's not a whole lot there, right? It's just kind of a soulless,
At least that's what we
very,
think.
very important role. But I'm not an accountant, so God bless me. Those.
I think there's a lot more than that. But
Yeah, I know there's more than that. I know there is. You look at sales. Sales is about getting everything, getting the business in, making sure the contracts are right. When you do all of these things, you start breaking everything up. The only one that really shows how much you care is training.
Yep.
Right. And so if there's a heart within a company, it is training. Right. And so I tell Greg, I tell anybody who trains, I'm like, the way you show your employees that you care for them, the way you show your love for them is to train them. So if you're going to supervise an employee and they make a mistake on something that they've trained in methodology, you lead with training, meaning that you lead with your heart, lead with, that's the culture that you want to develop. Now, if you train them over and over again, well, say twice, because that's what our process is. You train them more than once or more than twice, and they continue to do it. They're not saying,
I don't know how. They're saying,
I don't want to.
I don't
right?
want to. Yeah.
And I don't want to is basically saying, I don't love you back. And it's like, that's fine. Then go somewhere else and not love somebody that will actually put up with your abuse. I'm not doing it. So it's, training is important.
You guys both mentioned something that I thought was really a good takeaway from our initial call. You mentioned the goal of training should be to replace ourselves. Can you elaborate on it a little bit on developing that strong training so that you can bring in the future leaders within your company, once you guys get to that retirement age, right? That's the goal, to continue the family dream.
I mean, I can speak to how it is for me. When you talk about that, I think that's the next step that these, successful companies to very, very successful, household name companies do very well. They realize at a certain point we have to stop, like Matt and I always say, working in the business and start working on the business. And that's when the training comes in. Like, how would I want to do this? How do I make it simple for someone in a different state where I'm not standing there, or, if I'm not here, how do I make it so simple that they will understand it? And we can then go accountability backwards and say, okay, all the steps got checked.
Yeah.
where we're not having that stress, and then they're not having that stress. Like, I wonder if I did it right. No, they know they did it right. And that comes, honestly, it's not just, training your end user, your franchisee or your employee. It's more of the stuff that happens in our office, and how do we talk to customers? How do we talk to each other? What needs to happen when you start a training case, a new account? It's endless, but it's something that, like I was saying, it's how you take that next step.
Yeah, and I think there's a reason that people sell their companies around a certain dollar amount, right? Because they get to a certain point where they're like, do I want to replace myself? Do I want to do all of this? Because I would argue that the work to replace yourself after working in a business for 20 plus years is as hard as it was on day one when you started with no business and you were bootstrapping. It's just as difficult.
Yeah, it's much easier for us to just hit the streets and keep doing what we're doing,
right,
than to sit at a computer at a desk and start writing.
Yeah, it is, because you walk into an office that you're used to being part of every conversation. You're used to being an impact on things every day. For you to walk in and say, hey, I'm just going to spend the next 4 or 5 hours writing content so that we can create training for people who are going to do this role, do this job. I think for most entrepreneurs, that's one of the hardest things that they'll ever do. And it's just not feeling like they're making an impact every single day. So if anyone listening to this is kind of in that mode and they're like, well, maybe I should get some PE money, or maybe I should sell the company, I would encourage you to really look at leaning into the hard work, because everything you need is in your head. You just got to get it out, and you need to put it in some sort of structure that people will be able to use.
Especially if you're doing like a generational business, you need that. Because Matt and I, we clean buildings. If our kids wanted to come work for us, they've never cleaned a building. And then Matt and I look, do we want them to?
I don't know.
I don't know. But if they wanted to, they need to have something where this is a business. Where they can run a business, but all of that, framework has to be there first.
So always replace yourself is important. Always.
Matt, you touched on it at the very beginning. We just kind of scratched the itch a little bit. The last several years now, for people living in this country, has been pretty difficult. A lot of uncertainty in the economy. You guys discussed on a podcast, on an episode recently, how to succeed in struggling economy with highest inflation we've seen. First thing that kind of comes to my mind is creating new opportunities. So many cleaning companies, as we were talking earlier about contracts and making sure the scope of work was there, sometimes we hear of companies leaving opportunities on table that somebody else might already be doing, or the company didn't know that, hey, well, I'm going to use the example again, in the Midwest, I didn't know you guys did snow removal or shoveling or something like that. So that might be a good tool for companies to kind of expand upon, and what they might be leaving on the table with a contract already.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, the reason why, like, we have Stoke Services, which is doing all of our specialty services work. It used to be part of OctoClean, but we separated it, divided the two. We, a long time ago, made the decision that we have to be able to do all of the services, or it's like letting the wolf, the fox into the hen house, right? And so we really worked on those disciplines, on how to be the best at floor care, how to be the best at carpet, care, what's the best state of the industry equipment, et cetera. And what that's done is, during times, let's just use the downturn of the economy in 2007 through 11. What we had to pivot to during that time was away from Class A office space into medical and schooling, because those are going to be brick and mortar sites that were going to remain, versus what we are currently seeing still. I mean, the vacancy rates are at a historic high.
They are.
Because people work at home.
Because people are working hybrid, right? So we had to pivot there. But really, during that time, what we did really well was construction cleaning. Because what was the money that was being pumped into the economy, it was through the federal government and modernizations of schools. And so we were like, well, what do we need to, we need to do something to be better at this. And we became, the premier choice for for construction cleaning at that time. Do we do it now? No, I don't want to.
But we had to then.
But
Right.
I would say that, when I would challenge anyone who's listening to this, and there's going to be a handful of people who will understand what I'm saying. When March 15th of 2020 happened, okay, there's a handful of people who are listening to this or watching this podcast
Don't
right
know what
now
that means.
they're going to say, yeah, I just kind of hid in my hole for for 6 months until I figured out what was happening. Because what could you do? I mean, the world stopped.
No, for us it didn't.
In 2015,
Same.
in 2020, March 15th, 2020, we turned on the heat and we started going nonstop. Yes, it was like running a marathon standing still, but we worked our tail ends off, and it was one of the most profitable years that we ever had because of COVID, not because COVID made us not make money. And it was because we pivoted over to, doing disinfection cleaning, doing a bunch of state contracts, being really the only company who had access to not only the working knowledge of doing the work, but also the equipment and the disinfectants. And so there was a little bit of luck involved, sure. But
I mean,
it was just never stop.
well, they say
Whatever it takes.
luck smells like pepper or perspiration.
Yeah.
That's what luck smells like. And really what happened with that is, I mean, electrostatic disinfection, it was not even heard of at that time.
No.
And at the time I was working as EVS director at a hospital, one of our hospitals, and it got brought to me and I was like, you know what, let me do some data, let me do some research on this, and it worked great. So we were doing it in NICUs and ERs and things like that. It's kind of like an ad service thing. I sat with, hospital CEOs and they're like, I don't even know what that is.
No. They had no idea.
And we were showing it to them and everything. And then, lo and behold, years later, we had all the equipment sitting here and COVID breaks out.
Yeah.
And we had the hospital background and we had all this education that went wrapped around it. And we knew like, hey, it's COVID, but it's not going to kill you as long as you know what you're doing. And the same thing goes with any challenge with people. If it's the same thing with window cleaning, if you're in a building and someone else is doing their windows or they're doing their carpets, just don't be afraid to get the education, invest in it.
Well, and I think that, just kind of wrap up this question, I think for us, it's if you're in business and you use it's winter and I can't do anything because the roads are covered in snow or whatever it is, and you're like, here's my excuse to sit in my house and wait, right? I mean, that's not good enough. If you're going to be successful in business, it doesn't matter all of the diversification and why you need to do it for the economy and all this other stuff. It's an attitude, it's a character, it's a way of being that people who are in business that succeed are curious, creative, and super hardworking. So if you're not willing to do those things and be those things, then you're always going to be like, well, how come these guys make it? Well, this is why, because we're kicking ass. That's why.
OctoClean has a great marketing team, and Andre has been a big help in just communicating everything. And I want to ask you guys, what role we're looking at, this economic uncertainty. What role for you guys has marketing played in maintaining a growing commercial cleaning business during economic downturn? And how can business owners alike maximize their marketing budgets?
Well, I think a lot of what happens with marketing budgets is that people don't always clearly understand where their money is going.
And how customers actually buy.
Right. And how customers buy. The best marketing that anybody in this industry will ever do is clean your buildings and do a good job, right? That's the best marketing. And then it's going to be the action of asking for referrals. Right. That doesn't cost you much, right? And that was the old school way of approaching. For us, we spent the first 20 years of our business.
Yeah, we didn't spend $1 on it, I don't think.
Just doing those things.
No, they did mailers. Remember the mailers?
We did some mailers.
Terrible.
But then moving into, okay, we're actually going to have our brand, be up in front and people are going to recognize it. And then it's going to be, how do we spend our money? I mean, are we going to spend it on, pay-per-click campaigns? Are we going to spend it on, mailers? Are we going to spend it on, email campaigning? Or what are we going to do? And what I tell a lot of folks is that you can't do just one thing, right? You really kind of have to try a little bit of everything. For example, like what we're doing today is, to me, is more of a branding budget, right? Like we're spending time, on a podcast, communicating our knowledge, et cetera, that we want folks to know who OctoClean is as like an industry leader. But it's not costing us a bunch of money, but it's costing us time. And that's important for us to recognize. That's what all of our
Yeah.
podcasting is a branding budget. And, same would be for, putting money into, a nonprofit, a gala or something like that. Like, what am I really getting? I'm getting my name in front of people who are going to recognize it. Advertising budgets and marketing budgets need to be separate. And I would say most of the time your advertising budget should be guerrilla marketing and should be out in the field, like doing the work.
Especially when you're new.
That's what it takes to build. If you think that a mailer is going to get you somewhere, the people who are buying from you from a mailer are going to be $250, $300 a month cleaning contracts, 1 day a week,
That you
that
don't
are
want anyway.
impossible to sign or impossible to staff and keep people in there unless you're doing subcontracting, which is technically against the law. So there's things that you've got to look at, that there is no easy way to build your business, and there is no silver bullet that's going to get you there.
Right.
So, branding, build a brand that people are going to look at and see as a professional brand. And then when it comes to advertising, be careful how you spend it, but never forget that elbow grease and sweat equity is never going to be replaced by a mailer.
Yeah, or an
Never
ad
gonna
on
happen.
Facebook.
And so, yeah. Go
And
ahead.
you guys get it. I mean, looking at the brand, the shirts, logos, the studio behind you guys, the coffee mugs, every little intricate detail. If it's possible to have that company logo, that company saying, take advantage of it.
Yep.
The industry's biggest commercial cleaning show is less than a month away.
Right.
ISSA North America. OctoClean is participating in some training and presentation while being there. What's your guys' overall goal of this session, and how can people attending join as well?
Well, first I want to say I think we're honored to even be invited. Matt and I've been going to ISSA since, I don't know, forever. I remember the first time we went, we're like, wow, this is really big. There's this many, janitors.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's just an honor to be invited, and definitely more an honor for, Matt to come out and speak. So, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I would say that anyone who hasn't been to ISSA, I would highly recommend you go, just for the sheer, like how grandiose it is, right?
Yeah.
It really does demonstrate the size of this janitorial industry, the janitorial and sanitation supply industry. So make it out. But for us, I mean, going out and being a presenter is, definitely an honor. I mean, like Greg said, and what I hope people are going to get from, our presentation is that, everything starts with a contract. Everything starts with a well-bid, profitable contract. And so this whole piece is going to be about how do you bid janitorial jobs. And my hope is that it's going to be pretty dynamic, and we're going to be able to get into some more Q&A, because even though they wanted me to send a presentation, I want people to challenge me, right? I want people to come out and say, well, why would you bid it like that? And why are your money, why are your dollars this way? Why are your percentages set up in this way? How did you come up with your profit margins? And those are good questions to ask, and I'm ready to answer them. Yes, there will be a presentation that I'll be giving, but I don't want people sitting back like, I bid price per square foot. I mean,
Right.
I want them to talk
Yeah.
to me. So interactive.
so if you're going to be there, talk to Matt.
For you guys, what does it mean personally to be able to be in front of your peers, to people who are sitting in those seats that were where you guys were back early 90s? What does that mean? I know you guys are passionate about that story, about where you guys began.
Personally, it's kind of emotional for me,
Yeah.
because we've always done it. We've always done what we've done because we recognize an opportunity to transform what this industry looks like, and to be given the respect and dignity that we deserve within it. And what I know about ISSA is that there's a lot of BSCs that show up, that walk the floor and look at all the stuff and do all the things. And they don't, I mean, there are a handful that really take themselves seriously, that really believe in what they're doing for their industry. But there's also a handful of them that are just kind of like wandering around looking at things, and they're not really sure, they're kind of not directed exactly on where they
Right.
need to go. Like for me and for Greg to be out there and to be recognized as people who can actually contribute, like we're just janitors. And what I want to be able to do is provide to them, Greg, to
Yeah.
provide to them a forum for them to say, like, look, dude, I'm
struggling.
I'm struggling. I'm screwing up here. I'm not making money where I should be. Like, where is it? And then for us to like be able to like I really just want to be able to sit and have a beer with somebody, So that's what I'm hoping. Like the little kid in me is like, let's go out and like have fun, and let's hope that we get to meet some people and talk to them. And
Well, Greg always meets people.
now Greg's best friends are every Uber driver that he ever has.
Hey,
So,
same here. Same here.
See? Same the same way.
How can our listeners find your guys' YouTube channel for podcasts, for your guys' shorts that you guys do? And there's also some additional content too that they can get from you guys for a fee. How can they find that? And if they have any additional questions for either of you guys, what's that best case of action as well?
yeah.
Good, man.
So we have first on YouTube. Our YouTube channel is tell me, Moses. OctoClean Media. I know. So OctoClean Media, and we have lots of videos on there.
Mm-hmm.
And I would highly recommend that you start there, consume as much as you can. Leave any comments there. We always respond.
Yeah, we love comments.
And then as far as the octocleanmedia.com, which is our new site for folks who are looking for consulting services or content, a lot of documents, a lot of training. We're building that out over the next 6 months or so. It will become a very robust training opportunity for operators. That's one area. And then as far as talking to Greg or I, true story, I had a guy send me an email to matt@octoclean.com, and Greg is Greg at octoclean.com.
Don't make it that difficult.
This guy calls me out of where was he? He was in Philly. He was in Philly. And he sends me an email. He's like, hey man, I don't think you're gonna ever respond to me, but I have these issues and I'm bidding this job. Can you help me? And I was on a drive to Arizona. I pick up the phone and call him, and he was like, I can't believe you called me. And so we talked on the phone for a good hour, and then he sent me over some stuff. I worked with him on, what his pricing could look like for this project. And he called me back about a week later, and he said, hey, we submitted it. I think we're going to end up with it. About 2 days later, he called me and said, we did get it. Thank you so much. And I'm sending you Philly cheesesteaks from Philadelphia, from his buddy who's got the best Philly cheesesteaks in the country, supposedly. And I think they were great. They were fantastic.
Nice.
But, we're humans. Like, we're real people.
Yeah.
So, reach out. We'd love to talk to you.
It's been a fun story. If I had to pick a song to describe your guys' journey, I'd like a little classical. Frank Sinatra, I Did It My Way. Because you guys have certainly...
That's favorite song.
Is it? Oh,
yeah.
And this is unplanned, unscripted, by the way, guys. So people listening, this is not planned at all. So I'm glad that, but in all seriousness, know what you guys have done and the knowledge, the passion, providing resources for people. It is very special what you guys are doing. We can't wait to see you guys at ISSA in November. And Matt and Greg, I want to thank you guys sharing that family story and talking with us shop today on so many wonderful topics.
Yep. Thank you for having us.
Really appreciate the invite.
Really appreciate it.
This will complete this month's edition of the Business of Cleaning podcast. Be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Podcast, and the video portion on YouTube. Also, be sure to leave us a 5-star review and your comments from everyone at Janitorial Manager, our guests, Matt and Greg Stowe. I'm Tim Clagg saying so long. Until next time.